Welcome. My name is Wanda Rochelle, and I am a licensed realtor and probate specialist here in Georgia. I also service Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, and I'm so excited. Today we have a special guest. I have Mr. Doug Gumby, and he is going to share his probate experience with us. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you first of all for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm Doug Gumby. I'm really nobody special. Just learning to appreciate what's in front of me and value what I've been through. And looking forward to having this conversation to help someone else who may be in a similar predicament.
Awesome, awesome. So we are here today because I had and I'll say the honor of serving you as your real estate agent when you sold your mom's home. And I guess it was, oh, maybe about 3 months ago, I guess it was. You know how time
It's a little
flies.
bit longer than that. Yeah. It
Yeah,
was September of last year.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
that's 9 months.
That time is gone.
Yes, it
It's
is.
gone.
And it was quite an experience. So I'm here today. I wanted to invite you because every probate situation that I have is different. And your dynamics were different because you had a sibling that lived in the house. So let's just talk about that experience, how that was for you.
Okay. You want me to talk about it? It
Yes.
was very different. I am the youngest of two, and I've always been happy-go-lucky. Just got to a place in life, becoming a husband and a father where I took on a lot more responsibility. Got a better business sense. I'm still a kid at heart. Don't tell nobody, but I got some wits about me, and I learned how to handle a few things. In the process, we we dealt with mom dealing with what we didn't understand at the time for the first 11 years was actually dementia.
Hmm.
And watching that process and watching your parent change and go through the different changes was tough on both of us. I say both of us because I adjusted my schedule. I had a job where I could work from home, and then I could, during the day when she was needing more attention, go over and make sure she ate and she was never alone.
Hmm.
I think it was harder on my sister, and I take care to say that because of the simple fact she also lived with mom and she was raising a son at
Hmm.
the same time. And so it was tough on both of us. We talked about a lot. And then as mom began to change, I don't know. I want to say, and it's no fault of anybody else's, I want to say that I probably had a more grounded sense because of uh, my dealings with death, in the fact that I've done countless funerals,
Hmm.
and dealing with a lot of, especially in the church setting. I'm not a murderer, so I'm not a anything like that. But in the church setting, I've dealt with a lot of funerals, and so you kind of become numb to the whole environment, for lack of a better term. And so in that, I kind of put myself in that box where, yes, she was my mother, but the business at hand was to make sure she was good. And so I put myself in that compartment, and we worked through it. My sister and I worked through it.
Hmm.
As we went on, the dementia progressed into Alzheimer's, and it was rough, to say the least. It was something I wouldn't wish on, and I don't have enemies, but I wouldn't wish on an enemy if I had one.
Right.
To watch your parent deteriorate right before your eyes, and to process what you're seeing. The disease is called the long goodbye for a reason. That was 12 years, just watching her change and go through those changes. And for me, it was one thing. For my sister, it was another thing. And so I was more mindful in that process, just trying to stay grounded and keep my emotions out of it. But then eventually, we saw her transition. And when she passed, things change when you have a parent that passes. Our dad died in 86. We watched the transition. We watched a lot of stuff change. And it's different with a dad and a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm still processing. I'm actually probably now 2.5 years later starting to process it. And it's like I don't know what to say half the time.
Mm-hmm. Let me
I'm starting to
let me
go
ask
ahead.
let me ask you this. Do you say you're just now starting to process it? I hear people say that the processing doesn't really start until after kind of you go through the probate process. The filing. Do you think that's why you are just now processing?
Absolutely. In that process, in watching her transition, in watching, I actually did my mom's eulogy. I directed or gave direction. My sister and I sat down and I gave direction as to what her homegoing looked like.
Mm,
And my theme, for lack of a better term, in that week was I'm gonna walk her to the door. I'm gonna make sure that she's good. And so, excuse me, um, I devoted that energy into
mm,
into giving her that, and
mm,
I did.
mm,
Um, I didn't cry. I don't cry much, um, but I processed through that, and we got to a point where we would need to, well, from a legal perspective, begin to probate the the estate and look at mom's property and different things and see what we were going to do. And we tried to talk about it. I had a copy of the will. We there was a copy of the will at the house we couldn't find because with the disease they moved everything
wow.
and they pack racked everything. Like she had a trunk full of stuff that she just kept because she felt like somebody else was going to take it or they
Mm-hmm.
were going to do something with it. We could never define who they were or somebody was.
Mm,
But just in that, we lost a lot of documents because she was trying to, in her mind, organize and help us, but it was no help at all. And so, just being that we've been a great family for a long time, I knew enough to know who to call, and I called the attorney that I know she would have talked to, that they had done business since 1976
yeah.
together. And so I reached out to the attorney, and he got me a copy, and he said if my sister and I were to agree on that copy, and I forgot what it's called. It's a certain terminology,
Mm-hmm.
that we agree that this is the 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 wheel that we would work from.
Mm-hmm.
And we agreed. We signed off on it, and we began. I began to say to her, we need to probate the will because in the will, she was the executor,
Mm-hmm.
and I respected that. Um, but again, I had learned some things over time that taught me that business needs to be handled, and there's no time to relax until that business is handled.
Mm,
And I'd gotten to a point, honestly, because I didn't want to fight, I didn't want to argue, I didn't want to fall out. Um, that my wife can tell you best. I was ready to just, even before it got started, let it all go. And I think she had the conversation with you, um, as well. And I was done. Whatever money I would lose, I would just lose it because money is not worth
right.
messing up your family.
That's right.
Um, and that's the perspective that I took.
Mm-hmm.
One day I was at work and I had a conversation with a mentor who I trusted what he said. And I talked to him for about 35 minutes. And he said, Doug, you got to fight for what's yours. You can't just give up.
Mm,
And so after hearing him, after listening to him, um, I called my wife and I said, I'm going to fight for the executorship,
mm.
and I need to know what to do. My wife swears she's an attorney because she worked for a law firm, so she swears that she's an attorney, and
Mhm.
she kind of pointed me in the right direction. I made a few phone calls and got everything that I needed. Got my That was in December of 23. So the same year mom passed, around she passed in April, um, December of 23. And that was a rough, when she passed, it was like the worst time.
Mm-hmm.
April 27th was the day before my sister's birthday. It was 8 days before my mom's birthday. It was
Yeah.
10 days before I buried my mom on my wedding anniversary.
Mm.
I and then Mother's Day. It was just like all of that at
Yeah.
the same time. And then on top of that, I watched with the probate. We had to probate the will, and I put in to become the executor. And my sister got served like right before Christmas,
Mm.
and she had a certain time to respond, and she didn't respond. And so January, I believe 29th or 24th, I got the notification that I had been, the time had passed and they had selected me, and I got sworn in as the executor. And it felt like I had on skates going downhill at that point, because it all just excuse me, happened so fast. Um, she got wind, and she came to know that I became the executor. At the time, she was actually staying in the house still, and with whatever resources she had, she was paying the mortgage. When she found out that I became executor, she stopped.
Mm.
And I'm not saying anything to paint a bad light on her. That's not my intent of
That's right.
being on this call. I want that to be said and understood. We both are trying, even at this stage, I believe, to adjust. And the mortgage stopped being paid, and the communication between us just stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nothing that I could say or do at that point to make it better, because I guess I had become the enemy. And that was not my intent. My intent was just to resolve
Right.
and take care of
Business.
walking my mom to the door. And this was a part of it, closing the estate out and figuring out what we needed to do. If there was enough equity in the house, or, from a real estate perspective, if there's something that I could do, she could buy my portion out and stay in the house. And, however it would work, I was trying to figure it out. It didn't work out that way, because when I became the executor, the next thing I did before I went to any bank accounts or anything, I called an attorney. I paid, I don't recall, I have a receipt for it, but I paid them to write uh, what is it, the resolution of the executor,
Mm-hmm.
just because my mom and my dad both were not just my parents, but they had business. And so I knew, going forward, as that representative, I needed to have a document, a legal document that states who I am, what my purpose is, according to what the will stated.
Mm-hmm.
And in that will, that was hard. It was harsh. It was hard to read, number one, and then start adhering to the details of it. So it was just a lot in a little bit of time. And there's no time, when you lose a parent, when you start that probate process, there's no personal time. You just, if you're with my personality, I take it to heart, and I go strong, and I don't stop until I just fall out. And that's part of the good part and the bad part of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, I'm just honored to have been able to take care of, my mom's estate. It was not pretty. And I know we're gonna have some questions about that. So I'll leave that up to you to ask those questions.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate that the purpose of this video is just to educate the community. Because would you say that most people don't even know what probate is until they have to deal with probate? So that, I mean, people will ask me, what is probate? They have no idea what it is. And so that's the reason I have this channel. And that's why we're doing this video, because
Yeah,
it affects families. I'm glad to know that your mother had a will,
yeah,
because the situation would have been a whole lot worse if she
it'd have
didn't
been
have
worse.
a will. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, think about that. I
yeah,
know it's a little rough for you, but it would have been even worse if she
yeah,
had not had a will. or if you hadn't even been able to contact the attorney to get the replacement will. So yeah.
And that was the fun part because the attorney had actually retired. And
Mm,
so I had to search to find who picked up his files. And he was still in the same office, but it was just, it was a lot, you know. And at the end of, for those that don't understand what probate is, trust me, you will not be a part of a Greek fraternity when you're finished, but you'll feel like it.
yeah, yeah.
You will
It's
feel
a
like,
it's a lot of work.
yeah,
It's a lot of research, and you're doing this in addition to your everyday
on
life,
top of,
your
yeah,
family. And I know your ministry, your career, so it's a lot.
yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So let's talk about the sale of the home. Your situation was different for me because like you stated, it was a little, different with your sister. You all weren't in agreement. So in order to sell that house, we couldn't even get in the house to be able
No,
to determine what the value of the home, what it looked like. So that was difficult because you can't list a house and say, hey, the house is going to be X amount, without even knowing what it looks like. So that was a challenge within itself. We actually had to sell the house, as I say,
sight unseen.
sight unseen.
Yeah,
And me as a real estate agent, when I'm dealing with investors, and sometimes some of these investors, I'm saying this, I don't care if I'm on video, some of them a little shady already, so it was really a challenge because they didn't believe me. They was like, well, can I see it? No, you can't see it. You're buying it, not knowing what you're getting into.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That was and it was kind of a shock because, you know, prior to, I remember one of the last conversations we had, we were in the garage. We would do a lot of, you know, just little quick talks or whatever, when mom was still alive. And that was one of the conversations that we did have. You know, it was like, we're not gonna fight over this, we're gonna sell the house. And I was like, okay, cool. And this is not from me, this is from her. But in the emotion of everything, and I will clarify it that way. Um, Things changed. Um, the perception of what you think is not always the reality of what is, and so that was a quick dose of reality, for both of us. And so when that happened, and I started looking at accounts, and it's only this amount of money in the account, and that amount of money ain't gonna cover the debt that's on the house. We got to sell.
Mhm.
And so, thank you, first of all, for making that process a lot smoother than it was,
Um,
because you were able to, with emails, we emailed, we reached out to, the attorney that was there at the time, and just had the conversation, or tried to have the conversation, with them, to see how we were going to get through the process. And it was long and tedious. I remember going before the courts on the Zoom meeting and
mhm.
having to testify, having to go down to, um, I don't recall the document that I had to get the petition to get her served. And it's like, this is weird. I don't want to do this. You know, this is my sister. Why we should be able to talk.
Mhm.
But we were in a different space at that moment, at that point. And I had to accept that. That was and still is very difficult, to process, because this is somebody that you grew up with, that you played games with, that you, got on each other's nerves, and now it's like, because your parents aren't there, things change dramatically, and that's just tough. If I could be a voice of reason to anybody, from my own personal experience, I would say, do your best to not let the stuff come between you, because it's just stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and just keep your communication open and honest.
Mhm.
Um, if you say something, stick by it. If you agree to something, stick by it. Don't change midstream and then expect everything or everybody else to go with you. Be upfront. So,
Mhm.
um, that being said, it was not an easy process. Um, we had to fight. We had to go to court. We had to present evidence. I had to prove my executorship. Um, it was just tough. It shouldn't have been that. But those are the things that happen because it's we were dealing with people. It's not you against anybody. You're just dealing with people, and people are going to have different emotions about everything. And so keep that in mind in this process. Understand that the feelings that you have, or you may be strong enough to tuck away. And that was my personality. I'm strong enough to tuck away my feelings, and I'll deal with them later. Everybody's not you, and so I'm aware of that, and I respect that. But I just want to, at this point, I really wish it was better. I just really wish it was different and better. In that process, we went through, and I said again, you were a jewel, because you worked with the investors, and they were real cool with me. We had open conversations. We talked about it. They asked me about what I knew about the house, and I told them it wasn't a bad house. It just we can't get in. And in that process, think about this: we lost 100,000. We lost 100,000 because we were looking to list it at a certain point, and we came in 100. It was actually 125, something like that short. So because we could not see eye to eye, or we could not communicate effectively, and hear me say that I'm not shifting the blame again. We could not communicate effectively. We lost a lot of money that could have been good for all of us. And going back to the will, the hard part about my role as the executor is I had to adhere to what the will stated. And in adhering to what the will stated, I had to go back to realize that what was stated in that will was done at a time when my mom was in a sound mind. And if it were me or we had other siblings, those same rules would have had to apply. And as executor, I had to read word for word everything that the will stated. And it got to a certain section that says that if anybody does not cooperate, Section 6 does not cooperate with the executor
You
and
remember
their
the section?
role. I remember to say, I promise you, I read every word. If any one of the benefactors does not cooperate or hinders or all of these terms, then they are to be treated as if they predeceased me. So that was a hard pill to swallow because now I'm dealing with a situation where we are not communicating. I'm still taking the responsibility. We are not communicating, and we are making it bad for us. And now I'm having to look because you're not participating, you're not allowing the realtor to come in and just simply take a picture. Now everything that belongs to you has to be put aside for your son. And that's a tough decision to live with and have to live with. And I had to do that. And I had to walk through that process. And that was a tough pill for me to swallow. I've laid down, I grew a orchard of palm trees trying to bring peace, sometimes just for myself, but through emails, through text, through conversations with family members, and just trying to figure out if we can sit down. It was offered, it was put on the table multiple times, but it wasn't received or acknowledged. And so I had to stick to my guns, and that was the hardest part of probate. The hardest part of probate is when that will states that you are to do something, you ain't got no choice. That's what you got to do. And so it created me. It changed me. I'll just say that it changed me.
And I think it's more difficult to have to deal with probate because you're already having to deal with the loss. of a family member. You already, lost your mother, and I honor your mother because she was a great woman in the community, Pastor Colette Gumby. So we honor her life. But I'll tell you this, Doug, I'm a woman of faith and I believe in hope. I believe that God can restore families.
Absolutely.
Probate should not tear families up because I'm sure your mother wouldn't want, you and your sister to be going through this. So I'm a
No,
woman of hope. I pray that he heals your relationship with your sister, because the house doesn't matter, the money doesn't matter, the mortgage doesn't matter. What matters is the love that you have for your sister and that I know she has for you. I will say this, I find in my experience that a lot of times I think, and it's just my thought process, that that sibling that won't let go, a lot of times it's the one that still lives in the house or the one that was closer, even though it seemed like, okay, how are you going to not let us in, to take these pictures? Do you think maybe they're holding on to that loved one, possibly?
I don't know. I don't. I can't even tell you how to answer that question. Um,
Mhm.
and the reason it's so difficult for me to answer that question is because um, I, I don't know whether to call it a skill or gift or just something that I learned over time. I just learned how to detach so that I can live.
Mhm.
Um, I've dealt with a lot. I've lost a lot. I've gained a lot. I've learned a lot. But in the process of it all, I don't know how I got through.
Mhm. It was God. It was God. Yeah, you got through. You got through. You had the support of your wife, and God got you through it. And you had some good attorneys. Like I know some of the attorneys that you work with. I can, vouch for at least one of them, Rhea Johnson. There were some
Yeah,
awesome. She's an
yeah,
awesome attorney, her
yeah.
and her husband. So that's how you got through. Hmm.
Yeah, I know. I know from a you know a social perspective, I got through. I know my wife was there. I know my kids were there. Um, I I can vividly remember everywhere I was when I had the lowest moments. I can vividly remember. Um,
Hmm.
and those are the moments where nobody can answer those questions. Nobody can help you in that moment. There are no words that can make that pain go away. And
Hmm.
it's been the process of that. And that's why I say I think I'm finally starting to deal, just with that.
Hmm.
Um, it's a process. It's a process.
I think the main thing that I want viewers to know from this video is that, again, we're not trying to bash anybody.
No,
We don't
no.
want to do that with your sister, but we want to educate the community because if somebody watches this video, Doug, and their loved one has just passed away, and they're probably in a situation where they don't want to necessarily agree with the family, I want them to watch this video and I want them to press their way to figure out a way to be in agreement. Because
Put
again,
a game plan together right now.
yes, yeah,
Before anybody gets sick, before
hmm,
anybody fall out, go sit down and have the toughest conversation of your life.
hmm,
Um, put the game plan together.
hmm.
Since mom's passing, my children will not have to fight. That's all I got to say. They will not have to fight.
Yeah.
I went and I took care of business, and we already had a will. I went and did a trust so
Mhm.
that there's no arguments. There's no, y'all not gonna fall out. I'm not gonna allow that. Y'all
Yes.
gonna work together, and here's the plan. So go put a plan together as a family. The last thing we need is for families to fall apart.
Hmm.
There's uh, irreconcilable damage that happens when a family falls apart. And sometimes it's fixed, sometimes it's not. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a harsh reality. So while you're talking, while y'all joking and at these events, 4th of July is coming up, y'all probably be together. Sit down
That's
and
right.
have a plan together
Right.
and just stay on the same page and understand that every person in that family is going to handle things totally different and
Mm-hmm.
respect that. Somebody's going to take the lead. Don't be upset when they do what they do. Somebody's going to fall back and be quiet and let everything happen. Don't be upset when they do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They know who you're dealing with. Just know your family. Spend time with them. Talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Joke, laugh, but have a plan. Don't let death destroy everything. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen it all too often where families depend on that matriarchal figure or that patriarchal figure, and then when they leave, everything falls apart.
Falls apart. So true. Mm-hmm.
Everything.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm a firm believer in people having life insurance, having wills, having trusts. If you have a will, know where it is.
Yep.
Like in your case, if you're watching this video, you don't know where your loved one's will is, you should know that. Is it in a safe deposit box? Is it in a certain drawer? You have to know where it is. Because if you don't know where it is, it's no good.
It
Mm-hmm.
ain't go. It ain't no good.
And in the state of Georgia, I've seen people, Doug, that have wills and the will is not notarized. In the state of Georgia, it has to have two signatures to be a valid will. So
Yep.
yes, hmm
Yep. Yep.
awesome.
Of course, your friend already knows that because she's a notary and an
Yeah,
attorney, and he
absolutely.
gonna get me for that, but it'll be all right.
So what else would you share before we leave with anyone that's watching this video?
What else would I share? It's appointed for every man once to die. Um, I had a question asked years and years ago that I lived off of for probably 30, now 35, 40 years. The question was, when you die, will it ever matter that you ever lived?
Hmm.
When you die, how many people are going to be affected?
Hmm.
Death is something that is difficult to talk about. It's impossible to think of, but it's going to happen.
That's right.
And when we are wise enough, strong enough to process the good as well as the bad, we set our families up for success.
Hmm.
And my prayer is, or my wish is, I wish I could have my mom back, number one,
Hmm.
but I can't. I wish I could have uh, a lot of stuff back that I can't have. However, there's one thing that I want back, and that is relationship. Um, my sister and I, we were very, very close, and it hurt. And I don't talk about how bad it hurts, but
Hmm.
it hurt that we don't communicate. And I'll take my responsibility, my role of responsibility for what I did or didn't do.
Hmm.
Um, but put yourself in my shoes. I'm sitting in front of you tonight, right now at this moment, telling you what's really important. It ain't
Hmm.
stuff.
That's right.
It ain't things. It ain't houses. It ain't cars. It's the people you're connected to.
Hmm.
That's all you got.
Yes.
Don't mess that up.
Amen. 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 Praise God. That was so beautiful. Thank you
Yes,
for
ma'am.
sharing your personal story. It was very
Yes, ma'am.
personal, personal. And I know I asked you several times and I kept saying, if you don't want to do it, I don't want you to do it. I don't want you to do it if you don't want to do it. And you agreed to do it. So I thank you because this video is going to help some people. And I pray, Doug, that God will comfort you. The word says that he is close to the brokenhearted. I pray that there will be peace between you and your sister. I believe in faith, I believe in hope, and I believe he's going to do it. He is, in the name of Jesus. So thank you for joining me and sharing your probate story. Those of you that are watching, my name is Wanda Rochelle, and I am a licensed realtor and probate specialist. If you need someone to help you in the probate process as it relates to buying a house, please give me a call. Thank you,
She'll
Pastor.
take good care of you.
Yes.